The world has experienced pandemics before. Between 1700 and 1900, there were 60 major epidemics of influenza. The Spanish flu killed between 50 to 100 million in 1 year out of a then world population of 1.8 billion. Approximately 675,000 Americans were amongst the dead, more than a combined loss of life for the US from World War I, World War II, Vietnam, and the Korean War. Although it is impossible to pinpoint the genesis of the Spanish flu of 1918, most look to Haskell County, Kansas as the epicenter of the deadliest pandemic ever on record. The U.S. military's Camp Funston, part of Fort Riley Complex, one of the largest military bases in the country, was significantly affected by the virus due to its proximity to Haskell County. While the virus was not severe in late 1917 and the early months of 1918, soldiers with symptoms continued to train at the camp before heading across to Europe to fight on the side of the Allies. However, the consistent movement of people and crowding that characterizes a wartime effort led to the strengthening and further spread of the virus in Kansas and on U.S. warships en route to Europe. This was one of the largest recorded movement of people in a 1-year period, which saw 1.5 million U.S. soldiers cross the Atlantic. Resultantly, the virus ravaged war-torn European continent and other parts of the world. Mortality rates were particularly high in Spain, leading to the virus being labeled the Spanish flu. While the virus took hold in the U.S., many states were called into action to control the spread. In October 1918, as the virus hit its peak in Nashville, Tennessee, the state health board ordered a shutdown of businesses, churches, and all public gatherings. All 92 churches in Nashville complied, while some churches outside of Nashville resisted the ban briefly, arguing that it infringed upon their rights to gather. With the healthcare system under tremendous strain in Nashville, churches like the First Presbyterian Church and the Russell Street Church of Christ partnered with the Red Cross and converted their churches into makeshift hospitals to take in many, largely the poor, for whom healthcare was understandably inaccessible or unaffordable in a crisis of this nature. Members of these churches and a few other Christian institutions risked their lives and well-being to seek out persons suffering from the pandemic, bringing them into the churches to receive treatment. Other churches provided money, transportation, and other resources for the humanitarian and evangelistic effort. When the pandemic quelled, the membership of these churches exploded. The Russell Street Church of Christ built a number of new churches, and by 1920, it established the Central Church of Christ in downtown Nashville, where they conducted a medical health clinic and built dormitories for the homeless and nursing students. History shows us that the blessings that came to the Russell Street ministry in the midst of a health crisis is not new. Circa 250 AD, at the height of persecution for the early church, where Christians within the Roman Empire were being falsely accused, persecuted, and killed, their humanitarian efforts during an epidemic known as the Cyprian Plague earned them a 40-year period free from persecution. In 1873, a cholera outbreak in Nashville brought on fear and saw the exodus of a number of pastors from the city. One pastor, by the name of David Lipscomb, who resided outside of the city, remained and served the poor and vulnerable, particularly African Americans, who were acutely affected by the outbreak because of their economic position. The cholera outbreak killed 1 out of every 25 Nashville residents. Lipscomb, who also contracted the virus, chided the Christians who fled. He describes the destruction that it caused to families in an article he published in the Gospel Advocate. Lipscomb stated, "It often first attacked the strong arm, the stay and reliance of the family. If not his, it struck down other members of his family so that he must needs cease to labor in order to nurse them. Again, all business ceased, and he could not get work to support his family. In one family of industrious people, consisting of a father, mother, and 6 industrious boys and girls, everyone died save the mother, and she was prostrated." Lipscomb heroism and Christian witness lives on in Nashville, and his name is etched in the city's history, with a university carrying his name to this day. Fast forward to 2020. The church has yet another opportunity to evangelize during a pandemic. Another opportunity to enhance its respect and appeal to the communities it serves. If we can acknowledge that the government has acted in goodwill by closing our church doors, then in the same breath we should acknowledge that it is only a temporary measure that will infringe upon the ritual of congregating for a time. While we are fortunate enough to not face the dire health conditions like the saints mentioned above, let us use the opportunity to lead the fight against COVID-19, a fight that comparatively demands much less of us than the saints that went before us. If anyone should be at the forefront of adhering to the health guidelines, it should be us. If anyone should be supporting the government's measures at a time like this, it should be us. Unlike the saints at Russell Street, we have the advantage of technology to virtually congregate and evangelize. We often say there is no distance in prayer. So let's put it to work in this period. In Matthew chapter 22 and verse 36, Jesus was asked, "What is the greatest commandment?" His response in verses 37 to 40, "Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment. And the second is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. All the law and the prophets hang on these two commandments." How do we love our neighbors during a pandemic? This is an important question, since Jesus himself equated it with our love for him and asserts that it encompasses all of the law and the utterances of his prophets. I am strongly persuaded that our love for our neighbor during the season should be in the form of social distancing, wearing masks, and abiding by all the health measures and protocols. Now is a time for the church to seek out people within and outside of its doors that have suffered at the hands of the virus. Numerous people have lost jobs, shelter, and money as a result of the economic fallout. Let's reach out to them and show the practical love of Christ. How can we convince our neighbors that we love them during a pandemic? By agitating or going to the church buildings in our communities to congregate, knowing fully well that this act of expediency jeopardizes their lives, their loved ones, and the larger national community. Let us pray for a swift end to this virus. Let us pray for our government, healthcare workers, citizens, and the economy. History has shown us that the pump of COVID-19 will fall to the hands of Father Time. May the church use this time wisely. The world has experienced pandemics before. Between 1700 and 1900,